Divine Source, Great Spirit, north, south, east, west, earth, sky, above, below, within, without, we anchor this space sacred through all realms, times, dimensions, places, and spaces, in service to love, in service to truth, in service to the highest good of all. We ask that you guide us in everything we say and share this day for the highest good for those that will come to hear this recording. We thank you for your blessings and your grace, and so it is. So welcome to Talking Spirit, episode number 2. My name is Elizabeth, and I'm here with my friend.
Hi, this is Jutta.
And we are here just being in the flow of the unknown and being available to say yes to our purpose and our calling. And so we've just been in conversation about topics that we might explore. And as is the case with everything for the two of us, and probably many of you, we're just here to be in the healing and in the forgiveness and in the possibilities that the Spirit would have us explore in any moment. And so we've kicked around ideas about what we might do next. And we kicked around the idea that Jutta would direct this. And in this moment, this is what's happening. And so we're just really in the awareness that, we're all working to get over ourselves. We're all working to bring home parts of our minds, parts of our personalities, so that they can be in the channel of grace, so that they can come home and be made available to serve the greater good and the greater purpose of awakening. So that feels what's showing up at the moment. And I'm just going to turn it over to you, Jutta, if that feels present as something that we just kick around. And, as with everything, we may or may not share this out in the world, but we're just having fun with this to the best of our ability to see what will happen. Just making space for Spirit to work through us today.
Yeah, thank you for opening it up. Well, we had some ideas, like you said, and to me, what's often very inspiring is the topic of just what does practical spirituality even look like? Because we're all very deep. I mean, most of us, I feel like, are very deeply down the path of some kind of spiritual teaching. For me, it looks like it's mostly been A Course in Miracles, although, like we shared last week, I've come from other pathways to even get here, and it's continuing to evolve what that looks like for me as well. And your path has been totally, in a lot of ways, different to mine. And I get really inspired these days by allowing in whatever is helpful. And to me, that's part of, what it means to practically apply these teachings. Obviously, we need the theoretical foundation, and I have that. I have that theoretical foundation, but the practical application is still new every day, and there's so much to expand to every day, or expand into every day. And it's when you get into practical spirituality, there's a lot of humbling required. And that's the phase I seem to be currently in. This is where you've caught me today. But yeah, I think it's really helpful to sometimes share, what it could look like practically when you're on the spiritual path, because it's not always easy. It's definitely not always easy, even when you know the teachings really well of whatever path seemed to pick you. It's not like all of a sudden you have these rosy glasses on and everything is great all the time. It's messy.
I was having run through my mind the last couple of days this kind of idea of, if you knew what you were getting into, this idea of, I'm going to get on the spiritual path and, have at it. Most of us looking back would head for the hills, because the dismantling can be very, very painful. And it doesn't have to be. It just does not have to be. But for most of us who have seemed to be in the world and have developed these ideas of my life and the me, my, I, being dismantled and divested of it is, that loss of control, thinking we're in control, that's a real doozy. And so I was having that run around in my mind, and I was just sort of having spirit meditation yesterday of, people like the idea of, I'm going to wake up. And then, as you say, the practical application of it is something else. And, I mentioned in the last talk that I've had quite a few new people come in that I've been working with. And just because of the journey I've been on and because the way spirit uses me, it's intense. And that reflection comes back, like, this is intense. And often that's with people that have had some degree of spiritual teachings. They've gone on retreats. Maybe they've worked with teachers. And then they get a different kind of reflection. It's not good or bad, but mine is often different from what they've had prior to me. And they get a reality check of like, maybe I don't really want what I thought I did. And that's a deep commitment, that you and I have made. And I've balked at it many times. So the practical application, as you say, it's no joke. It's no joke. And we were talking before this chat about the opening prayer that I did last time. There wasn't much reflection back about whether people got anything of value out of the call, but there was some reflection about two things. One was that maybe Yuta should have spoken more, which I agree with. Certain way, and yet in another way it's like, that's what happened. That is what was the spirit speaking through us. So in a way, like, to go back and look at anything is ridiculous. But the other thing was about the prayer. And for me, for 25 years I've been in practical application of the spirit taking me through, what am I praying for? And it's gone up and down and all around over 25 years. And now my prayer is pretty simple. It may have been long for the first time doing a recording of it, but it's actually pretty simple. Speak through me and show me the way, and may it serve the highest good. That's my practical application after 25 years of practical application. So I think that's great, Yuta, to make this the topic, just kind of organically has bubbled up as we're in it. So what else do you have to say?
Well, yeah, like you've been on this path seemingly a lot longer than me now. Like it's been what, 10, 12, 13 years maybe for me. I mean, I did start pretty early, but like that, even for me, that's many, many years of my life. I'm only 34. And if it's been 13, 14 years of a spiritual path, that's most of my life. Almost. But like, the reality too is still that half the time I don't know what I'm doing. And that can be really scary and discouraging because, the mind is really keen on coming in saying, well, you should know by now, right? And I mean, I think that's a really deep part of practical application, like having these kind of thoughts come in. And what do you do with them now, And yeah, it is like, it's almost like a daily reality check. Like the people that are coming into your life now that you're supporting, like, yeah, they're getting a reality check. And personally, me, I'm getting my own reality check still every day. Like some people might look at me and they know that, I've come through like a spiritual community that seems to be very highly regarded. And so I think some people look at me and they think I've got it all figured out. But hi, like I'm still like, I'm not done. Like I'm not, I would never tell anybody that I'm like awakened and I have all the answers. So that might be a reality check too. Like, even though there's a really deep foundation of the spiritual teachings that speak to me most in this lifetime, on a daily basis, moment by moment, there's so much shedding still that happens. And yeah, like there's it's just a continuous like deepening of what is it now? What is it now? And just really loosening all the judgments around it. And I'm so grateful to have companions along the path like you and whoever, comes around here and there. And have that support, because it gets so confusing sometimes. Even after so many years. And
you said a few minutes ago, that it's messy. And I would say yes, extremely, extremely so. And, a lot of people, I've been kind of off the radar for most of my journey, in the cave, really doing the deep dismemberment, because it is ugly and because it's not really well understood, people are going through it. And so, a lot of people that may have known me back in the day or even through these years might have a very different opinion about me, right, than what I know to be true for myself. And, they've seen at times the messiness and the depression and the I want out and let's kill me, kill myself kind of stuff that can come into the mind, because this stuff is in the mind and that's what's getting purified, And so, all kinds of stuff comes up. It's not a requirement. Not everybody goes through it the way you or I did. But, same thing here is like, I often think about, there are people that, they've spent their last 40 years teaching geography, let's say, right? They can talk about geography till the cows come home, right? They know everything about it. I don't have that kind of stuff other than my deep inner dive into my mind and into my heart and in working with spirit. So at this point, it's like I can talk about my experience really from a very wide angle because I've been in it. This has been my teaching. This has been my PhD program, and that doesn't mean I've got it figured out either. Of course not. Right. I mean, this is not what we're here to be talking about on these recordings in my mind. Right. It's like, it is down and dirty, nitty gritty. And I think there is a spiritual materialism that's kind of come to the forefront in a really dynamic way, because people are waking up and because people are dissatisfied with life on planet Earth and because people do feel the call and say there must be another way, and they're right. And yet, a lot of times the personality and the ego, they go onto the spiritual stage with all the crap that they had in their so-called material world. And so it can be about bigger, better, use your gifts to be somebody and get famous, just like you would, in the entertainment arena, whatever, right? So there's that kind of way of being materially in the spiritual arena. And that's just not been my experience, that I could have stepped on the stage and like, hey, everybody come to Jesus and come with me and, let's go walk on water. I don't have that story to share. I have the story to share. It's a deep dive and a deep dismantling process. And, there are stories galore of people who are well esteemed. I remember I've shared about this one, a couple of years ago. There was somebody who was like a Buddhist teacher that people loved, some young man, and he killed himself, right? Everybody thought he was walking on water and had it all figured out.
Yeah.
And he killed himself. And that, that's a story told over and over again, because as it said, it's a razor's edge. You do not walk through the eye of the needle, with all your baggage. And so if you want to go home,
right,
it's all got to get dropped. It's a very fierce, fierce path. No matter what path, no matter if you're a Buddhist, no matter if you're doing martial arts, no matter if you're a Christian, right?
mm-hmm.
If you're going home to yourself and to your true divine nature, there's no you by the end of it. That's pretty big.
Well, that's a fact. Yeah.
That's big practical application.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess like what I'm thinking of too, as you're talking about this, not taking, you can't have any baggage through the eye of the needle. I feel like one thing that's pretty consistent through all the spiritual paths is that, that like you can't have any baggage, and there's so many conclusions that are made based on something like that, like, oh, that's what that means this now. Mm-hmm. Basically, I need to be like walking around in a rag and live on the streets. A lot and actually no judgment against that. Like that's some people's calling.
Yeah.
But like this is like the thing, right? You have the theoretical teachings and the mind just makes interpretations based on what it thinks that might mean. And like spiritual life is so individualized. That's one of the things that I think I've talked about most with the people that I've stayed with over the last like year and almost 2 years since I've left the community, is that this is so individualized, that practical application, like the way it works for that whatever enlightened looking teacher over there, the way they've applied the teachings to their life, that's individual to them, and I think they can give pointers, and there's such helpfulness in following teachers here and there. No judgment against any of that, and yet we all have to find what it actually means for our individual situation. Like, yeah, that, and I think that's just where it gets really deep, and where so much shedding actually happens when you really realize that those teachings have a very specific practical application to my personal life, and whatever worked for somebody else doesn't necessarily work for me, and I have to really explore that. And yes, helping hands can come along the way, like, I've been a helper to many as well, but I hope I hope that I've done this. I feel like I always share with whoever I work with that you need to take this into your own heart and see what the Spirit says to you. What is this supposed to look like for you? So, yeah.
Yeah, hallelujah.
That's just what I thought of.
Yeah, big time. I'm cut from the same cloth, you might say. And I'm so grateful for everything that has come across my path. And I'm the kind of person that's always wanting to hand it over to others. It's like, here, take it, because it feels good to pass it on. And also take it and do what you will with it, because this is how I seem to have been guided to do it. But I don't know if it'll be right for you. It's kind of the disclaimer of like, give it a go. And I too, I'm so grateful for some of the people that came across my path early on. They were always saying, you got to take it to God yourself. Like, here's some really important reflections. Here's some stuff, because I see your head is all screwed up. But they would always turn me back to God, and not God as a white, haired man in the sky, but there's one of them, right? Practical application. What does the divine mean to me? Totally different than anybody else, potentially, right? Like, if I say God, that may not mean the same thing for you. For me, that can be the universe, that can be the quantum field, that can be nature, it can be all kinds of stuff, right? So practical application of just something as simple as the idea of the divine, it's so rich and full and also complicated because we seem to be complicated people, but I was always turned back by people because that was in my heart, really. I found those reflections that said, go within, Elizabeth, go within. You'll find the answers that are right for you. And here's how I did it.
Yeah.
Everything. That was everything for me, and they just kept empowering me to know that it was inside me, that connection. And they weren't looking to like have codependent relationships, like I had in my life, right? They were saying, I'm not your source, but you have one. Go get it. Go find it.
Yeah. I mean, even with my past of, how many years was I there? Almost 7 years, I think, in the Living Miracles community. And what I found, and I shared it there with many people that crossed my path there, is that even in there, I realized that it's actually a lonely journey, because it's just you with the spirit, or whatever word works for you. You might have some, like I said, like some people might walk with you for a while, but it's still just you and the spirit.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really like deep realization everybody has to come to at some point. And it's really inspiring too. It's not like it's lonely. Maybe it feels like that sometimes, but like you have everything that you need, actually.
Yeah.
When I had that thought the first time when I was still in community, that this is actually lonely. It's just you and the spirit. Like it was, I don't know, it was really inspiring actually to have that idea, because I hadn't really heard anybody say it like that before. And there's still gratitude for all the helpers that come and walk with us, for whatever time is given. And it's always for strengthening that connection of you with the spirit. Like that's what it's all about. And yeah, I don't know, it's very inspiring, because it really means that you have what you need in order to wake up, in order to, you have that connection. You can't even break it. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, it makes me think, for some reason it popped into my head, this idea of marriage in the world sense, of finding a partner and getting married, and how many people, find themselves, and you don't even have to be married to have this realization, but, how often it is that people find themselves lonelier than ever before within a relationship, right? Because this idea that the fantasy that we have of, oh, this thing is going to make me feel better, right? Oh, if only I had a relationship, then I'll have somebody to share the difficult times with and to support me in, paying the rent and whatever the fantasies are, right? For why people get into relationships that are usually unconscious. Often, very quickly, it's like, oh, this isn't it either, right? So in the beginning of the spiritual journey, because our connection doesn't feel strong within, even though it's there, as you said, it's never been broken. It can feel like, wow, tough toots, like this isn't it either, right? In the beginning of our spiritual path, it can feel, as you said, like you're really alone. And for many that translates into feeling lonely.
Yeah.
And but it's a solitary journey ultimately, and it is a big doozy to realize it. And like you, I mean, I lived in a yoga retreat center in the middle of Manhattan. We had about 600 to 1,000 people every week through for classes and satsangs and meals. And I was very lonely. We had a staff, they were lovely people. They were dedicated hearts. We chanted and prayed and did yoga together. And, there was always somebody around, but I felt deeply alone. And ultimately in the best way, because there was nothing I could grab onto. It was another place where I thought, oh, if I go do this thing, then I'll get the answer. This is where I'll get the answer. Oh, it's not out in the material world. It must be in spiritual community. Wah, 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 wah. Like when you lose at the, Price is Right. It's like the big buzzer goes off, shit. Pardon my French. Are we going to get edited out of YouTube? It's one of those like, damn, I thought this was going to do it for me. Yeah. And it ultimately, if you stick with it, at times will feel like, oh, this is what I'm to be doing. This is how I'm to use my mind and my energy. But as you say, it feels messy much of the time and feels like you're alone much of the time. And like, I've had mostly a spiritual path that's been very solitary. I had in the beginning people that were kind of on my path with me, but most of mine has been me and spirit. And it probably was harder than it needed to be that way in a sense, but in another sense, I'm so grateful for it because I didn't have anything to hold on to other than to keep turning to my own connection. And that today feels like absolute grace. And I even tried in later years, like when Living Miracles came into my mind, I had this thought like, oh, maybe I need to be back in spiritual community. And, it's very compelling, the idea of support. And I gave it a go and it was so fast. It was like, Spirit was like, yeah, go check it out, And it was like, I wanted to put myself in another box because in a way, the idea of community for me was more certainty. Mm-hmm. Even though you feel alone and uncertain, it felt like in that moment when I was longing for it, it felt like it was going to provide me some sense of certainty and connection. And it was like, I quickly saw that was just another trick for me. Mm-hmm. Maybe not for somebody else, but for me, it was another trick of trying to not take responsibility to fulfill my purpose with spirit, sort of kind of on my own, right? We're never on our own. But it was like I was going to try to use that as an excuse to not just put my butt out there on the stage flapping around. I thought I could go hide out in spiritual community is I guess the bottom line of it. And thank God I quickly saw, that won't do for me. That would be another hiding out. So practical application. There it is. It's like,
exactly.
Face it, like, shouldn't I? Should I be there? Should I be here? Should I leave this relationship? Should I go somewhere else? Do I need to get a job? Don't I need to get a job? It's like, it's very practical.
Is there a right form?
Right, exactly. This idea.
It's such a temptation. Right? Exactly. It's such a temptation to get on the spiritual path and then find the right form everywhere. And maybe you even do find the right form for you. And then you want to tell somebody else, that's the right form. You should be doing that too. And it really, it's like it's all helpful, right? And it's all helpful at certain times, and but we always have to come back to like, okay, what is it for me? What is it for me? I have to constantly go back to that personal connection, and that's where spirituality becomes actually practical. And you can find gratitude for all of the other symbols that might show up, or even you find like, oh, that wasn't it. Oh, it's not community for me in this lifetime. Great. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. It's like, it's such a fine line. The whole thing, the Razor's Edge you said earlier, which is actually one of my favorite movies. But that's it. Like your life has its own razor's edge. Yeah. And yours is different from mine and from everybody else's. Totally. And I think that's always something I want to bring home with whoever I support at any given moment. You have to find, this whole path is actually super simple. Yeah. Right? You've read all of these books, blah, blah, blah. Perfect. You have a good understanding theoretically of all the stuff. Now, super simple. Be with the spirit and what he, she, whatever wants to do in your specific life, your specific situation. Yeah. It's very simple actually, but it feels very complicated when you're in it.
Yeah,
sometimes.
because the personality or the ego, however you like to talk about it, it does not want to sit with itself. And so it's really easy to get caught in I kind of call it mental masturbation. It's like really looking for pleasure in in just the wrong place. It becomes this obsessive looping in the mind, and, and that's for the course, in my experience, what little I've tapped into with people that are really dedicated and see themselves as course students. It's so like stuck in the head, logic and figure it out and, all that kind of stuff until you break through it potentially. But, it can be really easy to be stuck in thinking you can figure it out. And as you say, find the right form and, just spin yourself out endlessly, rather than stopping. Ultimately for me, the times where I feel like Spirit's been able to kind of break through with me are the times when I'm just like still and facing the real shitter in my mind, the emotions that are painful, the thought forms that are really aggressive and, destructive. It's like back to that practical application, like sit and face the feelings and the thoughts. And it is a razor's edge, and it's easy to want to distract, and it's easy, as you said, in some way of like, let's lock it down.
Yeah.
Oh, I figured out the way.
Exactly.
Want to see that in living color, just go on Facebook. I mean, everybody's got a rant about this is the way, and I don't know the way. I just know what seems to have happened for me. And even that's questionable. I seem to have a story that I remember that's a history at times, and it seems to get used to talk to people about like what they may be called to or how they might navigate it with spirit. But even that's questionable. Like, I really don't know. And I, of course, am at times used to deliver a message where it sounds like I know, but it's a moment by moment proposition, It really is. And that is not the way that the mind is trained out in the world. The mind is trained to be specialized. Talk about your accomplishments, talk about all that you know, and you're very wise, and I've been this for 50 years, and all fine, as you say, no judgment about it. But it's like, it's a very different way of looking at things. And so being vulnerable, we were talking before we got on our call here to do this, about practical application is vulnerability.
Yeah.
Big time. It's like, I invited you to come stay here. I could be gone by the time that date seems to show up. I could have been guided to pack up and ship out, It's like, literally, I have no idea what's happening beyond today. We seem to have this date where you're going to come be here. That's practical application. We seem to have needed to get a ticket for you to come here. But literally, I may be dead, or I may have been guided to be somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Unlikely that you're going to be led here and I won't be here, but it could happen.
Yeah.
Practical application.
Yeah. And, I don't know if what we're talking about sounds like we're judging a lot of stuff, but that's not really that's not what it feels like. It's actually, I'm very inspired by calling the mind straight. Like, don't get confused by what you're seeing other people do with their spiritual path.
Yeah.
It's very simple. Like, there's a very personal, really palpable connection that you can build with the spirit that you actually already have, but you just forgot, like all of us. We're just running around dazed and confused most of the time. But it's in our nature to have this really palpable, really inspiring, really fun. You keep talking about fun, making things fun, having fun on the spiritual path, like a really fun, deep connection with the spirit where you just let him, her, whatever you pronoun you have for your connection, let them actually run the show.
Mm-hmm.
Not that anybody else is doing it right or wrong. Like they're all doing it right for their own life. But there's something very like inspiring about sharing that you have your own connection and you need to discover that. Not as a chore, but because it's going to actually be really fun.
Yeah.
And it's going to be so strengthening, and you get to watch everybody else around you, and you just get to appreciate how they're doing it too. Not that they have to now do it the way you're doing it, but there's like it just brings everything really into this nice flow and alignment.
Yeah, it's it's good to talk about the judgment. That's part of the practical application. These things do bring up judgments, the way other people seem to do it. They bring up our judgments and our beliefs about things and our opinions about them. And, that's just part of the journey. And I agree with you, Yuta. It's like everybody's got their direct line. And thank God for that. We'd be screwed if we didn't, right?
Oh my God,
then we would literally have to have, gurus, dragging us around by the nose all the time. And that's just not, it wasn't my path this life. I wanted desperately to have a guru. I sort of in my mind have a teacher, if there were a guru that's in the ethers, I feel like it would be Babaji for whatever reason. He's shown up, seemingly saved my life a couple times, connected me with people that are clearly part of my path. So if I have one, it's probably Babaji, but I'm not treating that as like, oh, I have to go run everything by Babaji. No, I feel like if it is Babaji, then Babaji's saying, you go direct, young lady. You go direct to source, So thank you for bringing that up, And for some people, as you said, it will be that they're to have a teacher this life.
Yeah.
Very, very practically, they'll have a teacher that will guide them every step of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really right for a lot of people. And I wanted that, but that was not what I got. I really wanted somebody to tell me what to do.
My God. Don't we all?
Shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great topic.
Yeah. And there's so much. There's so much you get into, but but yeah, I think my bottom line is always just like that's the practical part about spirituality. You need to connect within yourself with the source, with however it speaks to you. And let it be that, like, let it be okay, the way it sounds for you, the way it comes through for you and through you, and just being very accepting of what it's supposed to look like for you. And really stand in the strength of that, which can be the scariest fucking thing. Because you can't compare it to anybody else's path. It's like this is just, that's like the burn of the spiritual path when you really get in it. So flapping out for the whole world to see. Yeah. So maybe it's just a message of encouragement too, like I hope there's some encouragement in here. Like it's going to look crazy sometimes, but the way it looks for you is the way it has to look for you. And there's something helpful about it because that's the way it is for you. Yeah. Yeah. Well done to plant the reminder. If it isn't there, hopefully we can be communicating the spirit, which is why that prayer is there in my way of seeing it in the beginning is like, let spirit speak through us. So hopefully you get the vibe of the energy of what we've been through, so if you're having a tough time right now, know that is where you're at and there's nothing wrong with it. And, if you're really joyful right now, great, enjoy it. And, if your world is crumbling and in ashes, that's apparently most helpful. Yeah. And I've been through all those stages and I could be through all of them today, Yeah. There's no arrival. There's no arrival to where we walk on water and never, we had the idea of doing talk about bodies.
And we got started on that with, I think I made a comment saying that enlightened people still poop, So this idea that, that people will transcend while they're in bodies, all of the bodily kind of things, and, that they'll never have to do anything that's difficult or that has them on an edge. I don't know that. I haven't met those people that have transcended while still in the body, things like getting a cold now and again or having diarrhea. It's like, it's what happens sometimes, seemingly.
Yeah.
It's just good to remember. It's part of the story, because otherwise, if you think that, you're supposed to feel great. Oh, I decided I'm on my spiritual path and I'm 1 year in. And why don't I feel like I'm in heaven?
Right.
That's a huge expectation that most people have.
Yeah.
Oh, I decided to turn my life over to the divine. Oh, now I'm going to walk on water and feel great all the time. That has not been my experience. It's just not what's happened for me. But maybe it will for you. So, maybe you'll have an easier time of it than I did.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the beauty of people walking seemingly before you. Yeah. It's like there's a lot of dirty work getting done that some people won't have to go through.
Exactly. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Yep. That's the prayer, right? Is that we lighten the load for those that would seemingly come behind us, or that even went in front of us, to lighten the load for all of us. That's the forgiveness work. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I had fun. How about you?
Yeah, I have fun. Yeah, thank you. Let's see where it lands and what might come next.
Yeah. And the fact is, people, if you're listening this long, sometimes I talk a lot because that's what happens. There was comments about my talking too much, and I just love it. I'm still processing it. So
the funny thing is, it was kind of agreed upon. Like, I agreed to that.
Yeah, well, you wanted that for the first time.
Yeah.
So now I told her today she's got to step in and go toe to toe with me. So I think we did a little better this time.
Yeah, in a way, this whole thing, the whole talk today, practically speaking, also is what practical application looks like, because you're getting it firsthand. This is today what my practical application looks like.
Showing up despite not wanting to. It's hallelujah. It's great. It's beautiful. Okay.
Yeah. So thank you for showing up. Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for listening, everybody.
Yeah. To everyone that's been here.
And just the last thing, like just for myself, I know that I've needed a lot of support. And I just want to offer support as well. Like, feel free to reach out to me if you need any support at this time for your path.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great.
So, thank you.
Thank you.